This is Gabe Leydon, CEO of Machine Zone, maker of Game of War, the most popular mobile game in the world. Thank you. So, I thought you were bringing Mariah Carey with you, or maybe Kate Upton.
I think she's backstage trying to get a deal with Nicola right now.
Okay. I was trying out for a part in your next commercial here.
Well, you look good. It would work.
So, sword's too small, though, right?
Yeah, too small.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so Game of War has become, Gabe spoke at our conferences in 2011 and 2013 as well. And Game of War since then has become the top grossing mobile game in the world, and it has been in the top 3 for pretty much the whole couple of years since it launched. So that makes your company the most successful new mobile game company in the Bay Area here, also in the US, and one of the most successful in the world. Yet, this all comes from one game, and your strategy doesn't resemble Nicolo's at all, and I wonder how you sort of explain this success. You have 3 million competitors in the app stores.
The game that we wanted to make is incredibly complex. When we started building Game of War back in 2011, we wanted to build something that the whole mobile ecosystem could play together at the same time. Mm-hmm. And what we started building was an Android-first game that was easier to release on Android on iOS. But we built it to be a very engaging, very complex experience with tremendous amounts of concurrency. The translation systems that we built to support this kind of global community coming together inside of a single game. The distribution and technology we used so it could work on Android 2.2 because it does. Mm-hmm. To try to get this ultra hardcore experience that was the exact opposite of what everybody was doing, which was Apple-esque kind of UI, simple, easy to understand experience. Nobody was thinking people want games with thousands of options. And if you look at the PC market or console, they're pretty much all like that. So we said we're going to make a very complex, very large experience, and it's very, very technical. It's really hard. It's close to something like EVE Online. Mm-hmm. It's the largest single shard game in the world. Ever. So it's bigger than Second Life, it's much bigger than EVE Online, and it's very, very hard to manage. It's not something where you could have 10 people working on it. It's just impossible.
There's this gigantic messaging infrastructure underneath.
Yeah, so the back end is built on something that we call real-time messaging, which is a messaging processing technology where we'll announce what we're able to do soon, but we're able to process, it's something similar, kind of the cousin to high-frequency trading. Mm-hmm. So it's not a typical game server. There's no server loop. We're just able to process all the actions in the game incredibly quickly. So it's very interesting tech. We've been working on it for over 4 years now, but it supports, we can definitely handle over 1 million players. In the old version, which Game of War is running on a very old version of the technology, we can handle 1 million players playing together at once, which is, there's no other video game in the world that can do that. So it's a very complicated experience, and it's very hard to run because we've had to do a lot of things that just frankly hasn't been done before.
And if you're like a player, you wouldn't even sort of notice this, right? I mean, you
notice
look
it.
At the screens and they're static screens.
You notice it in certain aspects of the game. There's certain events in certain parts of the game where everybody does get together, mm-hmm. and it's very hard computationally. So there's a lot of challenges for us still because the game keeps getting bigger, and these big events where there's a king that takes over the whole game has thousands of players fighting over a throne essentially at the same time. Mm-hmm. And you can see it there. You can see it in the fact that you can view any player at any time. There's no server in the game. It's all just one big environment. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot of people to run. It's not something that, it's closer to a PC MMO kind of in terms of operations mm-hmm. than it is a typical mobile game.
Yeah, you sort of made an impression on me when we were talking about this, and I asked you like, well, why don't you just do more games? Like, why don't you just keep on rolling them out on this platform? And you mentioned that why doesn't somebody do 4 World of Warcrafts?
Yeah, I believe World of Warcraft was made by 35 people in the beginning, and it ballooned up to 4,000 if you include all the customer service that they do. So these aren't easy. They're very, very complicated. It's very, very hard to run. So frankly, we're understaffed. We could use more.
And what did you grow to now?
We're currently at about 550 people.
That's pretty good. So you came up on stage in 2011 and predicted that user acquisition costs were going to soar out of control, and that was going to cause the industry to really separate into winners and users. And Game of War was sort of what you saw as a solution for you for that problem. How do you sort of look back on all of that prediction in particular?
It's kind of obvious. There's $40 billion or so spent on brand marketing digitally on desktop. And currently only about between 15 and 20% of that has moved over to mobile. And you're going from these very large screens that can show maybe 8 to 10 ads at a time, down to these very small screens that can show maybe 2. So there's a ton of congestion when that $40 billion moves from a very large screen size down to a small screen size. It's like equivalent of taking 3 lanes out of 101. So of course there's going to be a ton of congestion. So there's all this money coming from brands going into the mobile space, and it's going to cause tremendous inflation on the CPM cost. And it's been ramping up, and you're seeing kind of more and more. You'll see a lot actually this Christmas. And I think by 2017, more than a majority of the digital spend will be on mobile. And the mobile phones can't support that many impressions. They actually support much less impressions than desktop. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of money fighting over a much smaller impression pool. So it's definitely going to be a bigger issue moving forward. But that line is a continuation from 2011, to 2017. It'll just keep going, and it's kind of arching upwards now.
So why was the timing so good back in 2013?
Yeah, if you look at top grossing, most of the apps were from 2012. There's a few apps from 2014. I'm talking, just say top 25.
Today's list.
Today's. I don't think there's any from 2015, at least in the United States. There are in Japan, there are in China. But I think most of the 2013, Game of War was 2013, but I think a majority of them were actually developed in 2011. So I think it was a group of people who saw the trends and saw where things were going, that certain kind of browser style games were working well on the phone, like Clash of Clans and the social casino things. And we all kind of focused on those kind of core browser genres and brought them over to mobile and made them a more mobile experience. And that was a really big move. And it's still where it is today. But I think what keeps it there is the rapidly increasing cost of distribution. So it's the early guys probably aren't getting as much distribution as they used to be getting, but they have enough traffic to maintain the size of where they are.
So how important was the advertising, like Kate Upton or Mariah Carey, the TV ads, and why did it make sense for to do those?
Well, I'm a big fan of Asian free-to-play, and if you look at Chinese free-to-play, or if you look at Japanese free-to-play, there's a lot of celebrities involved in the marketing of these games. With Kate, we were focusing on American football. So we picked somebody who was a 5-time Sports Illustrated cover model. Somebody who watched football. If you watch football, you would probably know who she is. We only have one character in Game of War, and it kind of looks like her. So it kind of all lined. It was all lining up, and we went out thinking we were just going to market on American football, and that was it. Mainly to see what would happen. We didn't know honestly how any of it would go. Because we were doing something that was, Clash of Clans started about 8 months prior, but we were kind of taking it to a different level. And TV's very interesting. It's really hard to get right, but if you can get it right, it can work. But it takes a orchestrated effort across television and digital. You can't just do TV. You have to be really, really good on the digital side in order to make it work. So it's actually really hard to do right, but it's definitely there are definitely pockets where you could potentially spend and have it work out for you, but it just takes a lot of effort.
You get all this sort of free advertising as well on YouTube.
Yeah, you can. Anybody knows Machine Zone's been big in the digital ad space for a while, and I don't think anybody knew, even though we were blasting out ads, I don't think the general public knew what Game of War was, but as soon as you go on TV, people think it's a brand. It's really weird. Even though digital is just way bigger than television. There's just something that happens. As soon as you go on TV, it becomes a very big deal.
The television ads get, say, a bigger life on YouTube.
Yeah,
right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess some of the people looking from the outside in at you guys think you're overly dependent on one game, you spend too much on ads, or that this can't last, I guess, right? What can you convey, sort of from the inside out, something that shows you're putting a lot of thought into the strategy here?
Well, it depends on the observer, but if I would say it was other video game companies, I don't think the multi-title strategy is going to last. And that was kind of our bet in 2011. The market is too competitive, and the process of creating an app, running an app, marketing an app is too complicated to do for 5 games a year. It's just way too complicated, especially if you want to grow a game to a very large scale. I don't think you can. I don't think it's possible to do 5 games a year. I'm not even sure it's possible to do 2. So it may look weird, but if you hear everybody's statements of what they're doing, they're collapsing the number of games they're making, and right now they're saying, well, we're only going to make 4 or 5 a year, but I would guess in 2 years they're all going to say we're making 1.
So if you look at your 550 people, that makes you bigger than Supercell, smaller than King, smaller than Zynga. What do you sort of choose to do with the teams that you have now that you've got this great sort of engine of profits, right?
Most of it is on R&D and infrastructure. There's so much to do. We're adding hundreds of thousands of people a day. The customer service requirements are crazy, and we're way behind. So we just announced we're opening up a facility in Las Vegas. We're going to hire another 200 people out there just for CS. It's incredibly complex in every way. If you want to market at the level that we market at, you need well over 100 people just to manage the 300 to 400 ad networks there are out there in the world. If you want to run television globally, it's a gigantic effort. If you want to keep shipping features constantly, it's a huge effort. The QA across 3,000 devices is a gigantic effort. So I see it as our responsibility is to build out infrastructure to be able to create the company that can support mobile at scale. And mobile at scale is huge. It's terribly complex, and there's basically no tools for it. There's no engine you can get. There's a whole bunch of third-party services that you can do one little piece, another little piece, another little piece. And none of them are particularly good because they're not made by people who actually do this stuff. They're made by outsiders who think they know what we need to do, and frankly, they don't. Mm-hmm. So there's a tremendous amount of tools and management and just infrastructure overall that we need to build to be able to support mobile, because mobile is way bigger than I think the industry even gives it credit for. Managing it is incredibly hard.
So what do you think the game industry is going to be like in 2017? And also, what is your sort of next logical move then to be ready for that?
2017 will be probably, on the distribution side, it'll probably be 3 to 5 times harder than it is now. So people complain about how difficult it is today. The people in 2017 will look back at 2015 and say everybody had it easy. The complexity of running a game across all devices and all territories will go up. So the requirements for the company to be able to execute on it in a high quality manner will also go up. I can see successful mobile gaming companies moving into the multi-thousands of people. And where I need to position the company is there's a lot of tools and technology and processes that don't exist for free-to-play at the moment, and we need to create them all to stay ahead of the curve. So I see it as, Nicolo sees it as a distribution problem, so he solves it with stars, which is totally viable. I see it as a technology problem that there currently isn't any solution for, so that's what we're dedicating our time to.
Very good. Thank you very much to our mystery guest and the man on the Iron Throne right now.